Eylon, it's brilliant having you on the programme.
Hello, Alex. Glad to be here and to pop up on your TV screen whenever I'm invited.
Yes, you can pop up anywhere in my world. I really do like your forthright, common sense and passionate opinions. You must be delighted that Sinwar is a goner.
Israelis have a bounce in their step this morning. It's September 2002 and we just got bin Laden. But we're all cautiously optimistic because we know this isn't the end. We hope that Sinwar's death will create a pathway for the end of the war that Sinwar started. Hamas's entire leadership is dead. Hamas has lost. There is no reason for Hamas now not to surrender and release the hostages. And we need international pressure to give Hamas's surviving leaders, wherever they are, a reality check and say, this is over. You've lost. Release the hostages and let the whole region move on.
Yeah, but that reality check isn't particularly forthcoming, is it? Because instead you've got Biden saying, well, this is it. There should be now a ceasefire. You've got the main man. It's time to down tools. And Netanyahu saying, well, no, not so fast. The job isn't done here. Do you think actually, quite converse to this sort of encouragement now, which has kind of been there for a long time, oh, please don't fight, please don't defend yourself, that Israel should make hay while the sun shines and say, right, with the proxies hugely weakened, with the leadership essentially decimated of Hamas and Hezbollah, this would be the moment to go after Iran itself and strike the oil fields. Do you think that could be part of Netanyahu's game plan right now?
Well, let's remember, since October 7th last year, Israel has been under attack on 7 fronts, not only from Gaza, also from Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi pirates in Yemen, Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq, Palestinian terrorists in the West Bank, and Iran itself. It's been only 2 weeks since we had 200 ballistic missiles fired at Israel, forcing everyone in the country to run for the bomb shelters. And Israel is promising that the response is coming. Israel's defense minister says it will be a surprise. They won't understand where it came from or how it happened, but Israel will need to respond, because otherwise the message that Iran's leaders will take is that they can fire ballistic missiles and there will be no consequences. And now that Israel has dismantled Hamas in Gaza, destroyed Hezbollah's leadership in Lebanon, it is trying to tell Iran, you cannot hide behind your proxy armies anymore. Now, I don't know what the Israeli army is going to strike in Iran, but Iran is the source of the instability and the chaos. It is the regime that funded, armed and trained Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis, and Israel is determined to make sure that it faces consequences for its aggression against the Israeli people.
Despite rhetoric coming out of America in particular, and of course over here, we've hardly been helpful internationally at some of the concerns, let's call them, being voiced by our Foreign Secretary David Lammy.
To put it mildly.
Do you think that, to put it mildly, do you think, I mean, at least I hope that there's a degree of doublespeak going on here, and America might say one thing in electoral season, but underneath the surface, their attitudes and their actions might be quite different. Am I being overly optimistic there?
Well, the United States has given Israel very strong support, almost alone in the world, because soon after the war began, and let's remember, even the UK said it wanted Israel to win, countries very quickly backtracked. Israel is under immense international pressure to return to the reality of October 6th, 2023. And that's not an option for us. We need not only to get the hostages back, but to make sure Hamas can't take more hostages tomorrow. This war cannot end with Hamas able to regroup, rearm, smuggle in more weapons, build more tunnels. Anyone who wants a future of peace and prosperity in the region needs to be pressuring Hamas to surrender. Yes, we want a ceasefire, but it has to be a ceasefire in which Hamas lays down its arms, not a ceasefire that saves Hamas and keeps it on its feet just when it's on its knees.
Part of, I think, the plan, the modus operandi of Hamas has been to create a huge propaganda campaign against Israel internationally, coaxing Israel into retaliation, using people as human shields so they can portray Israel as the bad guys. And on some level, that has been relatively successful. But do you think that that's any skin off Israel's nose? Do you think they care about the fact that there are pro-Palestine marches happening on the streets of London?
You've got it spot on. Hamas's whole strategy was to generate enough suffering inside Gaza deliberately that the world would pressure Israel to back off, leave Hamas standing, free to plot another October 7th again and again. That's why it's been fighting out of schools and homes and hospitals. It wants people to suffer because it wants international pressure on Israel to free it. Now, Israelis are looking at the big protests against Israel around the world with concern and alarm. When people are chanting globalize the Intifada, they're talking about exporting terrorism and suicide bombings to the West. When they say from the river to the sea, they mean that Israel should be destroyed. But Israelis don't care so much about whether we're liked abroad, but whether we have the abilities that we need in order to fight our enemies. We're concerned about the protests in as much as they end up pressuring the British government to say, oh, you know, there's some political pressure here, we should stop supporting Israel, because we're under attack on 7 fronts by the enemies of the West as well. Iran is an enemy of the UK. The Houthis are enemies of the UK. They're supplying weapons to Russia that is now bombing Ukraine. So Israelis say, look, we're concerned about these protests, not because we want these people to like us, we want to stay alive. And therefore we need to reassure and re-support, get that support from our allies to make sure that we have the weapons and diplomatic support that we need to fight back the terrorist armies attacking us on 7 fronts.
Yeah, I don't understand. I really can't find it anywhere in my brain, my heart, my soul, why it is that the Western world has been, well, not particularly forthcoming in backing Israel to the hilt when it's in our interest. I said earlier on the show I'd be sending Netanyahu a Jeroboam of kosher wine right now and a box of chocolates to say thank you for taking out all these horrible terrorists for us. I don't understand how this erosion within our cultures and our societies has happened, quite frankly, why we've suddenly become lily-livered about backing Israel. I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Do you understand what's happened here?
I think I understand it. Backing an Israeli victory is obviously a Western interest because we're fighting the enemies of the West, because Iran wants to knock us out of action in order to continue aggression against the West, against Europe. You see that now with the way that they are arming Russia, and because the biggest fillip to international terrorism would have been if Sinwar could have, you know, climbed on the rubble and declared victory. But I think it's very difficult for people in the UK to understand Israelis' reality because it's completely abnormal. The British don't understand what it means to be fighting for your survival, to be fighting for your homes, to have 15 seconds to run when there are rockets coming in, to have your children conscripted into the military, to fight a terrorist army that is just a few minutes away from where people live. Israel's reality is not normal, and it's difficult for people to understand the stakes. People see the images of suffering on TV and they just want it to go away. Well, we also want it to go away, but we can't just wish the problem away. We need the threats to go away. We in Israel understand that if this war ends with Hamas in power, we're simply starting the clock ticking to the next war. So we don't have the luxury of saying, let's stop things in the middle and hope for the best. We know we are fighting for our homes, fighting for our lives. There is an understanding in Israel that this war is very much existential. And we need people in the UK, still one of our greatest allies in the world, to understand what the stakes are in this conflict.
Yeah, Eylon, don't go anywhere. I want to bring in one of our callers now, Andrew in Hertfordshire, and get his take on the situation. Hi, Andrew.
Good afternoon. A crackerjackery show. That statement of yours, a woke Mormon, very funny. I've got 3 points to make. The number 1 point is the reason we're in this place is because Obama didn't go after the mustard gas when it was used. And the people that are against the West, Russia, Iran, saw the West was the West was weak. Now, Israel has run a very clever, structured campaign. They knew they had to get Hamas out of the tunnels. And his death, and look at his death, in civilian clothes above ground, shows a brilliant military strategy. And Churchill said, once you've got an objective, in war, you go 50 miles past it. So when they get the hostages out, Israel will go back and it will evaporate all the tunnels. And that kills Hamas stone dead. We should support Israel. And in relation to the marches, those people that go on them, they let down the Western world. They let down the Jewish community. They let down Britain. But more than anything, they let down themselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, Eylon, that must be semi-heartening for you. At least the listeners of this programme here know exactly where they stand politically. But I think he makes an interesting point about Obama, at least about foreign policy, both in the EU and in America, when it comes to appeasing Iran. This idea that, oh, well, if we sell things to them so we can earn a bit of money from giving them X, Y and Z, that will normalise them. They'll become a bit more tame if we sit them round the table and treat them like adults and cooperate with them and bring them in from the cold. Perhaps that'll make them nice and cuddly, and it's kind of blown up in their faces.
That's a very sensible point. The Obama strategy was to say, let's bring Iran into the international system and maybe it will become a responsible power. And Iran simply took the money from the sanctions relief and gave it to Hamas and Hezbollah and its proxy armies around the Middle East, because it's a fanatical theocratic dictatorship that wants to see the Middle East burn. It didn't work. And we need a return to the campaign of maximum pressure against Iran so that it chokes off the funding to the terrorist groups that have been causing havoc across the Middle East. Instead of hoping that, a leopard's going to change its spots and Iran is suddenly going to become a friendly power.
Yeah, I mean, talking about funding, how troubled are you by the things that were uncovered about UNRWA? The fact that all of this, they were riddled, frankly, with people who were sympathetic to Hamas, among some of their operatives, Hamas fighters. And the UK has actually said, well, we're going to start giving money to UNRWA yet again. But what we do know is a lot of that money was misappropriated, used, for instance, all this Western aid flowing into the Gaza Strip, being used to make those tunnels and lining the pockets of the leadership of Hamas. They have more in their bank accounts than the entire GDP of Gaza.
I'm not worried about the revelations about UNRWA because they weren't a secret. I'm worried about the fact that the world doesn't care. UNRWA is a Hamas front. It's a UN agency staffed almost exclusively by Palestinians that exists to advance their forever war against the state of Israel. It employs terrorists on a massive scale. It lets terrorists fight out of their facilities. It launders money and information for those terrorists. It lets them hijack aid. It is an integral part of Hamas's war machine. And Israelis can't believe that no one around the world cares, that the British government doesn't understand that funding for UNRWA is a subsidy to Hamas. And that has to end. If we want peace in the Middle East, we need not only to destroy Hamas and demilitarize Gaza, but to de-radicalize Palestinian society. And that means no more funding for the organization that is propping up Hamas and raising new generations of Palestinians to fight against Israel instead of wanting to live next to it in peace.
Eylon, it's been a delight having you on the programme.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Djobnik signing off.